Hour 2 Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Jeff O'Neill, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. Confirm or deny later in the hour. Mike Johnson coming up from Montreal. That's where Noodles is as well tonight. You got games on the Ottawa side of things on TSN and on the Montreal side of things on TSN tonight. So I don't know who's in between the benches tonight. Does Johnny get that role? I don't think they actually do that in Montreal. Not sure they do go, but between the benches.
Mark Denis always kind of...
He's in there
he's basically on the Habs bench.
Okay, so Mark Denis maybe gets
what he wants.
That's his roaming area, and no one else comes close. But big game in Montreal tonight, as Ottawa's been red hot. Like they have been red hot right now. And the season series, though, as we can see up here on TSN 4, Ottawa is 0-2 against the Habs this year. And Montreal's picked up some big wins recently, and if they get a win tonight, they will leapfrog into that second wildcard spot. Rangers in action tonight, I guess, as well against Calgary. So kind of feel good about New York picking up 2 points tonight. But definitely a bigger game for the Habs because they're trying to get into it, where Ottawa has banked so many points recently and has looked pretty good and I think feels pretty confident about their game. This is one where Montreal's got to keep proving that they can keep pace. But I'm looking forward to this. It should be a great game tonight.
It's got to be fun for the Sens, like for management and Steve Stais and Dave Poulin and everybody to see their players kind of mature and be like, it's not about individual points or being a young, talented guy. They've had a bunch of things. Like even that third pairing, like that third defense pairing they got with Clevin, and I can't pronounce the other guy's name. But it's like they're big and they're physical, and they just got a bunch of things going right for them. You couldn't be happier for the Sens because no fan base deserves it more.
Well, and the Dylan Cousins deal has worked out brilliantly so far. It is early, and this is a long-term play. They got him on term for a long time, and they flipped Norris, who's a good young player. But you look at the stats, Cousins is really driving play since he's arrived. And that's, it's kind of been a theme of the show today. He's 1-2 punches up the middle of the ice. Stützle is going to do what he's doing, and that top line is really working well. He and Tkachuk have a great connection, and Giroux. But you're right. Like, all of a sudden, you bring in Cousins. I think David Perron's a big part of this, too. He had, first half of the season, he had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life and injuries, and he couldn't find the role. Remember, we interviewed him after he signed in Ottawa. It was a great interview and really inspiring guy. Like, he's been around the block. He's won a cup.
Dude, he's been around for a
long time, and like just a really, really good player, and he's a depth piece there, and that allows Batherson to be a depth piece, and it really comes down to depth. What are you going to get out of your whole lineup? And Ottawa has proven really top to bottom that everything's working for them, and Ullmark's been really good in that.
I think it's trending. I think the league is. I think you watch the Four Nations and you watch what's winning. Like. Seems like big and physical kind of cycles back in where it's like if you don't want to kind of do that or look like that or play like that, don't have a chance. Like you saw some really good players at that Four Nations Cup that just they were not out there. They were physically out there, but they weren't a factor at all.
Yeah.
Just pushed around and not like couldn't get the puck. Like just it's a big physical game, man. And if you think there's any other way to do it, obviously the skill level, you got to have players that can make plays, but they have to be able to do it in that environment. And if you can't do it in that environment, man, you're useless.
Yeah.
Like you'll get your cookies during the year, but I don't know. It's a different animal.
It is. And that's just been the history of the sport. That come playoff time, when the emotion ramps up and the whistles go away and the ice shrinks and everyone's moving and everyone's checking and everyone's paying attention to detail, it is a very grueling sport. Like it's a very difficult sport to have success.
And Hayes, I've said it since I started working at TSN. Of all of the major sports, you have to agree that the NHL is the one that come playoff time is a completely different game than what it is during the regular season. Baseball, same game. You can't really change it. It's more intense, But basketball, maybe it's more intense. But like hockey turns into an absolute war zone out there.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's different strategies that ramp up in different, in baseball, they're going to go to the bullpen quicker. And the NBA, they're going to defend harder. Whistles maybe go away. It's more difficult to get inside the paint. There's a number of different things, but you're right. I mean, hockey it's a flip that just gets switched.
Yeah. How many games in the last 5 years in the regular season have you watched where you're like, is anyone even like trying out there?
Yeah.
Playoff start, war zone.
Go time.
Yeah.
Go time. And it's not going to be any different in a month. A month from now, this is what's coming. So this will be a big one at the Bell Center tonight. Big one on TSN in Ottawa, TSN in Montreal. Noodles is out there. So is Johnny. Here's Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What's the buzz like in Montreal for this game tonight?
It's legit, guys. It's legit. It's been a long time since Montreal has sort of felt like they are playing for something, and all the players, even Marty St. Louis said on Saturday night they beat Florida. Really good game. Played really well. And there was like a standing ovation during the commercial break with 6 minutes left in the game. Even Marty said I had to almost look up and soak it in. It was just that sort of, this city's neat. Like when they get behind an event, when they get behind their team, they kind of bring up an energy like, almost like nowhere else in the league. And that's sort of the vibe. Like walking around town, you can feel it, you could sense it. Montreal could be in the playoffs if they win tonight. They're going against the other best team in the league since the Four Nations. It's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game tonight. And I think it's definitely a bigger game for Montreal because of the point difference, the fact that they're at home. Ottawa's been on fire. Ottawa, they might hit a wall at some point. I think they've won 6 in a row, and they've had some really signature wins. But this feels like one tonight, and I think it says something about Ottawa at the same time, Johnny, that this would be somewhat of a signature win for Montreal because of how well Ottawa's been playing. And I think that's the ultimate compliment, that the Habs realize they're in for a test tonight. But where are you in terms of these two teams making the playoffs? I feel like Ottawa's in a very good spot. Oh, you were saying that yesterday. I think most people feel that way.
Making the
playoffs. What about Montreal? Like we got 15, 16 games to go. How would you handicap their chances of getting in?
Yeah, so just for the record, I checked the playoff percentages on our favorite money puck. They had the Sens at 97.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
I would have said 78.
Yes.
Like in my mind, like that seems about normal. 97. So they're more than likely to get in there. For the Habs, the teams around them are sort of stumbling. And I think that's part of the equation when, do you trust Columbus to go on a big run? The Rangers, the Bruins, the Islanders? Nah. I mean, I think if any team in the last 16 games go 10-6, you're in. 9-7, you're probably in. Montreal's got games in hand of those teams. My concerns for the Canadiens would be they're getting carried by their number one line, which is awesome. They're playing spectacularly well, and Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky. Their goaltender obviously took the break and playing at the Four, being around the Four Nations comeback. He's been really, really good. They're still not getting a lot of scoring outside of their top guys, which can be a bit of a problem. But I'd say right now it's probably 33% chance, mini Jerry's, that they get in.
Ooh.
With all the other teams around them. It's a bit of a toss-up because they are competing with 4 or 5 teams, but they're in a very good spot by points percentage. They're in the playoffs right now, and you get around the team, you get around Marty St. Louis, there's a belief that they can do it, which is something that is probably you need to have, at least as a starting point, to get there.
Johnny, you do a bunch of Sens game along with Noodles. Like, what is it that's allowed them to turn the corner? I think you got to give a lot of credit to Greeny. I think they've realized that they have to check, and that's an imperative part of the game to move forward. Is it just development, or they just realize, like what is it? They just say what we're doing in the past was nonsense, let's fix this? Or can you pinpoint a couple things that have helped them turn the corner?
I think they're sort of lumped into one. You start with Trav, the coach, and recognizing like he has to teach them how to play defense. Yes, this is the NHL, and you're not supposed to be getting taught things, but he had to teach them like angles, lanes, positioning, siding, like all that stuff that they still work on every day to remind the players who had, a few years of not great habits drilled down that they have to change them. So that's on Travis and the coaching staff, and they've done a really good job. But also the players, I think, had gotten to the point now where they knew they needed to change. And that's not every team would get to that point. They've all made a ton of money. They're all very successful financially, on the ice, points, all the rest. But I think as a group, they sort of said, yeah, we're not good enough. Like, we're good players, but we're not nearly good enough to do anything. We need to change. We need to listen to our coaching staff and do what they tell us. And if you can be, I think they are 8th or 9th in the whole league. It's sort of like a lot of defensive metrics, expected goals against, chances against, all the rest. You give yourself a chance. And even though they haven't scored a bunch this year, which is probably why they keep winning right now, because they are scoring throughout their lineup after the Cousins trade. But they give themselves a foundation if they get good goaltending. And when Ullmark has been healthy, he's been good. Start of the year, he was coming off injury, not so good. Then got really hot. Then got injured, not so good. Then is healthy again. He's playing really well after the break. So I think it really starts with kind of the structure, the defense, which started with the coaches, but then the players embraced the idea that they needed to change to improve, to have a chance. And now they do. And they play hard. I guess that's the other sort of compliment to them. They play kind of a harder game. They make it sort of unpleasant, led by their captain, of course. But, it's a physical game when you play against them. Not a lot comes easy, which is hard to do for 82 games, but they've done a good job of it.
You talk about coaches and structure, MJ, and there have been moments this season where I remember on this show there's been open kind of questioning of Martin St. Louis and how he was coaching this Habs team. Were they playing with the requisite structure? Did he know what he was doing? A guy whose previous coaching resume mostly included minor hockey with his son.
That was a lot from Hayes, Feschuk, to be honest with you.
From me too.
I can recall a lot of commentary if you want to give
I'll plead guilty to some of that too, MJ. And I think it was a pretty consensus opinion at times because they looked atrocious at times this year.
They were the worst defensive team in the league the first 20 games of the season.
He had to just pipe in.
But that's just a fact.
Yeah.
They were horrendous.
Wrong,
the first 20
were,
games of the year, they were horrendous defensively.
So what's
by the
changed?
eye test,
Yes.
by the number test, by all of it, they were awful. I think a couple of things have changed, Fest. One is he was using this sort of like swarm defensive zone system, and guys just had no idea of what exactly he was looking for them to do, or they weren't quite able to execute it, even if they did understand. And he's pulled back on that. So they were like activating 3 guys into the corner in their own end all the time. And you had players who weren't winning battles, and the guy be standing in front by himself. Like, this doesn't seem like a good idea, and it wasn't. So I think he's pulled back on that and become a little bit more passive. Plus, the players have gotten better with it. I think that they've figured out sort of their lineup a little bit more, and identity when guys have sort of embrace defensive roles when they can. Kirby Dach, and I'm not happy that he's injured, was having a tough year at the beginning of the year, sort of defensively coming off an injury, and he was down like 30% expected goals for like 2 months. When he's your second line center running those numbers, it's impossible to look like you know what you're doing. So I think that's changed, and their goaltender's been good. So, he's grown, the team's grown. When you're around Marty, he's really smart. Like, it's not like he can't think of good ideas. He can't see that his idea might not be working and then pivot on the fly. He can figure out solutions for his talent level, whatever they might be. And he's done a pretty good job of that. And they've had some growth. There's still some holes in their lineup, but I do think they've just sort of settled things down because, Hayes, you're not a fraud. You're right. They were horrific the first 2 months.
Awful.
Awful. And the players were talking about, like, we don't really understand what we're doing, and it looked that way. But they've cleaned that up because they've gone a little bit more passive from it, and then just the players have sort of executed it better.
Yeah. I think appropriate assessment and appropriate analysis is what happened earlier in the year. And I want that on the record, that was appropriate at the time. And listen, I can shift with the times. I'm proud of the Habs. Like, the Habs are playing, and I'm sure they're very happy to hear that from me. I'm sure that's very important.
You know what? I'll give one guy I'll give credit, Hayes, is Noodles, because he comes up with a couple teams a year where at the beginning of the year we're like, sorry, Noodles, that's just not happening. And he said from day one, I think they're going to be playing meaningful games.
Yes, he did.
And they're a mid-80s team, and they're high 80s, and they're going to be playing meaningful games. And he said, I'm not going to make any guarantees, but he never left the stance.
No, like, he always held strong on that.
He never left the stance, and he was we even wanted to say to him, how's your Habs doing, pal? Like, they were garbage.
They were awful early in the year.
That's impressive in November that he could stick with that, because I thought before the year, and even felt more convinced of it, that they were going to be one of the worst 2 teams in the East.
Yeah, same. In
Yes.
November, that's exactly where they were trending. Here's another thing that Noodles hammered, and the only reason we're pumping his
Tampa
tires
Bay.
is because he's not here. Yes, Tampa Bay, but here's what he's been saying. Now, he's been throwing this mud at the wall for years, and it never stuck in the past. But he has been saying this is not a division that's going to have a team finish with 115 points or 120 points, and then the second place team has 112. He said everything's going to shrink. And he's absolutely right, because the winner of the Atlantic is probably going to have about 105 points, give or take.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're on pace for. This isn't, like Florida last year had 112 or 114. I think Boston had 110 or whatever it was. 2 years ago, we know what Boston did. 60 wins out of Tampa back in 2019. Like, there were always the 3 or 4 teams that just dominated, and everyone else was horrendous. And Noodles absolutely nailed that one. Because you're going to get now, outside of Buffalo, basically.
7 teams within 20 points. Probably, right? 105 to 85?
That's right. Yeah.
3 points gap per team. Like, that's tight. That's, a weekend swing one way or the other. And I guess now Noodles might have been right about that, but if you say it every year, eventually it's going to happen.
Yes.
We've been waiting 5 years for this to happen. And it finally has, where Boston has dropped, and Tampa has dropped, and Toronto has dropped, and Detroit has gotten better. Ottawa's gotten better. Montreal's gotten better. So, yeah, it absolutely is that. And, like Ottawa, to their credit, now you don't want to be too big for your britches, but, like, if you're to ask Ottawa, like, hey, great news about Columbus, they're like, we're more interested in what Tampa's doing.
Yeah.
Like, they're looking ahead. They're looking at Toronto winning last night saying, shoot, like, we want Toronto to lose because we were 4 points behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's where they're thinking about, like, let's get to third place. Let's get to second place. They're 7 up. They're closer to – I have to look at the standings right now. I think they are as close, basically, to first in the division as they are to missing the playoffs. So, like, they're comfortably in, and they're thinking about what's ahead of them, which is a good spot to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, and even within their division, like Buffalo's an outsider, clearly, but they're Ottawa's 8 points up on Boston, and they're 8 points behind Florida. So in terms of the 7th place team and the first place team, they're right in the middle of both. And if they win tonight, they're that much closer to the guys at the top. The Leafs did manage to win last night, and they played very well. Like, that's the most complete game they played in a long time. Calgary had no shot. They came out flying. Their special teams were hot. Matthews scores 2. Power play goes 3 for 3. And Max Domi's been a big part of it too. And I'm curious. We've had this Max Domi chat a lot in terms of where he fits, and he felt like somewhat of a nomad within the lineup. Like, should he play center? Does he play wing? Who can he play with? Where is he going to be comfortable? If he plays with the energy that he's played over the last week or two, that should allow Berube to be comfortable slotting him in somewhere where he's going to make an impact on this team, and that's got to be a positive, right? Like, he may still have to play the wing, maybe play center, who knows. But if he plays closer to what we've seen out of him last night, the game against Florida last week, it's been a dreadful season for him, offensively in particular. But if he can rise down the stretch and into the playoffs, he has the ability to impact the way this team is going to perform.
Yeah, and he has a history of being good in the playoffs and in crunch moments, right? I remember last year he was like a point-a-game player the last 20 years in the playoffs. I think he had 4 points in the playoffs, which, pretty good for Toronto standards. You're not looking for a ton. You're just looking for something. And it's not the funny part about his conversation is that it's never about, is he talented? Like, you sort of know that he's good. Like, he's a good passer. He's got good vision. He's fast. He could be strong. We know he's tough. He can shoot. Like, he's got the bucket of skills. It was just sort of like, where can he best apply them? And, I mean, I think center is good for him because it makes him skate, and he's a good skater. Maybe sometimes not so good for him because he's not the best defensively, but I think he's gotten a lot better at that to his credit. And if you were to design the team, like I think, you take away whatever they pay for Scott Lawton if you think, well, they pay him a first rounder, he's got to play higher up. But if you looked at the lineup last night, that's pretty close to what, other than Holmberg maybe being a little bit higher than they would, maybe they'd like a little more polish in that spot. I think Craig Berube likes the idea of that line. He's gone back to that McMahon, Domi, Robertson line. You're gonna shelter them. You're gonna get them third pair defensive minutes and trust that their speed can make things happen. And when it does, they're a different team. When that line goes, it hasn't happened much, guys. It's been 10 games this year where they've sort of been impactful. But when they do, it's a different team because they offer something in speed that the Leafs need. The Leafs are not a fast skating team. That's a fast skating trio. I bet that's the fastest line they have of the 4 they rolled out last night. And when they can play like that and make plays off the rush and pressure the puck and finish, the team looks different. So I give Max credit. He's sort of never pouted publicly, although it's bothering him, his stats and his lack of goals. Just keeps grinding away at it. But he would say maybe this is his time of year. And once you do it a few years, Hayes, you kind of get a pass for 50 games. That's okay. Max will be there when it matters most. So if he goes on a strong finish, plays well in the playoffs or however long it lasts, maybe he's one of those guys you sort of tolerate less than great production in the regular season because you trust that it's going to come when it matters most.
Johnny, along with Mini Jerry's, we also do a little thing called Underpants Cam. Where do you think Nick Robertson was as far as that element when Morgan Frost put that puck into the net and he was sitting in the penalty box for the second time? The first one was idiotic.
What was that about, O? Can you give me any explanation with the slapper? What was that?
If I know myself as a coach, as soon as he took the slap shot, I would have said, go take your gear off and go in the dressing room.
He heard the whistle.
It was just so stupid. That was like a peewee play.
Yeah. Would you try to say, I didn't hear it? Were you trying to stir it up? What possibly was he thinking when he did that? I have no idea.
I don't know. I mean, it was a good 2 seconds after the whistle. Everyone else stopped.
And he can't say he didn't hear the whistle. Everybody heard the whistle. It was so dumb.
Why was everyone else stopping? It was crazy. And then he takes the other one, careless stick. He was triple depends is what it was. He was whatever. He had leakage and seepage at the side. Yeah. It was a double blowout. It was terrible.
Awful.
Whatever the worst is, that's what it was. To the point where I'm watching, I'm thinking, not only might he not play again tonight, he's not playing next game. I'm not going to say never, but he's not playing next game either. You just played yourself out of the lineup.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because when I'm down between the benches, you can feel how badly he wants to do well.
Oh yeah.
That I think he hurts himself because he wants it so bad. He wants to score and he wants to make plays and he's always trying to do everything just trillion miles an hour as hard as you possibly can. And sometimes I'm like, you just got to take a breath. And I know it's hard because you put a lot of pressure on yourself. You're trying to find your role on a good team and you think you can score and you're not scoring and all the rest. But sometimes I just think if you just breathe, just relax. Doesn't mean don't try, but just stop ripping it so tight. And I think, that's where these penalties come from because he's trying to do everything. And it's almost better off if we just relaxed a little bit. But he would have been feeling incredibly rough because he would know that's it. He's gone. Here comes, they're going to put somebody else on there, Lawrence. They're going to put Lawton on there. We're going to play 3 lines, and that's it for me. But fortunately, the team played well. His line played well. He may have bought himself another game because they didn't score when he was in there.
Well, I think ultimately, MJ, you can talk a lot about Nick Robertson's kind of dicey situation, and he's been like that for a long time here in Toronto. But the bottom line is, as Brad Treliving has said multiple times, the Leafs need him to be a good player. He's essential to them being their best.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, he plays that style. I mean, he can move and he can skate, and if we'll see if he ends up playing.
He has potential to be a difference maker. There was a game, I believe it was game 6 or 7, where Nick Paul for the Tampa Bay Lightning had a couple goals. It wasn't Stamkos. It wasn't Kucherov.
Game 7?
There could be a game. Yeah, it was game 7. There could be some kind of game where you need a couple Nick Robertson goals. As crazy as that sounds.
And he's capable of doing it. It's not like you're asking, Steven Lorentz to do it, who's not a goal scorer. Robertson is a guy, if you get him alone in the slot, he knows what he's doing. He literally did it last night. We saw it. He's a guy that can read a play and he can get a stick on a puck with some mustard on it and put it in the right place. So he's just got to smarten up. He's got to make sure he doesn't put himself in the doghouse, basically between now and the end of the year.
When Morgan Frost put that puck in the net, I'm like, you might never see that guy again.
Yeah, that was trouble.
He might be on waivers.
It was trouble. It was trouble.
Tough.
But he survived, and the Leafs survived. All right, Habs Sens tonight. Enjoy it. Say hi to Noodles for us, and we'll do it again later in the week.
All right, pal. Have a good night.
There he is, Mike Johnson, our TSN Hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Drive the built-in Canada fuel-efficient, fun-to-drive Toyota RAV4 gas or hybrid models available. Visit mapletoyota.com. Confirm or deny coming up. And Steve Phillips in about an hour. We got Steve Phillips coming up with Major League Baseball starting today over at the Tokyo Dome. The Dodgers beating the Cubs today. And Carlo Koliakovo, first up, will be in studio at 6 o'clock as well. Coco's doing a panel tonight for the Habs-Sens game. So Carlo will join us on the Leafs, the Habs, Malkin versus Draisaitl, where Messier factors into all that. A lot of things are coming together here as we charge forward. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
I can neither confirm or deny that this is in fact a segment.
Boston trades Andrew Raycroft to Toronto in exchange for the rights to Tuukka Rask.
It's been my honor and a privilege to serve as the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club.
It's time for Confirm or Deny.
Do you regret giving all those gentlemen the no trades or no movement clauses?
Well, I can neither confirm or deny that.
I can't confirm or deny.
All right, confirm or deny. Very simple stuff. Statements are made. We either confirm them or we deny them. It's very easy.
Isn't it just crazy listening to Fergie? Like, how the Leafs back in the day, like when Sundin left, they did not just try to rebuild like right off the hop.
No, can't confirm or deny if we're going to rebuild.
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Now, I know you don't want to hear anybody defend JFJ, dog. But
they wouldn't let him.
He did say that he proposed to Richard Petty, the CEO at the time, a big rebuild, and Petty said, "No way, Jose. We got to keep winning. We got to keep making the playoffs. We're budgeting for the playoffs, JFJ. So get out there and get us into the playoffs."
I would have quit. I literally would have quit my job, man, and said, "Can't do it. Can't do it, man."
Richard Petty is an interesting name in the history of the city.
Is, man.
Like, he was around. When did he get that job? Mid-'90s, I guess?
Right when they formed MLSE.
Right, when everyone came together, and before they moved into the Air Canada Center and the Raptors and the Leafs, and then remember the condos were going up. Like, he was at the forefront of all that.
Oh, yeah.
And he's still pretty prominent in the city. Like, we've had him on the show before. He'll do interviews. He'll come on and talk.
Oh, yeah.
He's great. Yeah, he's an interesting guy, man. He owns like half of a little town out by Windsor called Amherstburg. He owns a bookstore. He owns a pub. He's trying to build a hotel out there.
Oh, really?
What he's doing in his retirement. Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Dude.
Interesting stuff. How do you own half of a town?
Well, he just bought it all.
He just bought all the property.
He and his wife, they bought this corner, basically. It's not a very big town.
Yeah, I guess not. I've never heard of it before.
So the bookstore and the pub, I think, are pretty like the two anchors of the place. And
that is the hot pocket of Canada.
I'll tell you what, I'd read the book, the MLSE, the Fergie era, right into where we are now. I'd read. I'd read the behind the scenes of that.
Well, because you had Vince Carter going on the other side down the hall.
Oh yeah,
right.
You had all kinds of stuff.
You had a lot of crazy stuff going on. TFC would have shown up.
Hey.
When in 08?
Petty bought that. Petty bought that for like a song. He went. I remember him telling me that story about how he went to New York to talk to the commissioner of MLS, Major League Soccer, about buying a franchise. He stopped by Gary Bettman's office, and Gary Bettman laughed at him, said they should give you one of those things for free.
Yeah.
He bought it for like, I think, $10 million, maybe a bit more than that. Now they're worth like $500 million.
Oh, it's worth a lot of money.
I mean, that's only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Less.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, they hit the ground. I wouldn't say they hit the ground running. Remember, it was a disaster with Toronto FC the first, handful of years, if not more. Really, until... who was it that showed up? Blanking on his name now. Who was the guy who took over?
Leiweke.
That was it, Tim Leiweke.
Yeah,
and Leiweke finally said, we got to go spend some money. We got to bring in the right pieces. Bezbachenko showed up, and the rest was history.
And as Petty likes to say, Leiweke spent some money, and how long did he stick around?
Not that long.
There were people in that building that
didn't love how much money he was spending.
Dude, I don't know if anybody in the history of professional sports fired more people than Tim Leiweke did when he came on the scene.
Yeah. Everyone was out on every single
thousands of people.
Yeah.
He fired.
I know. It was actually kind of heartbreaking. Like, it was understandable in terms of the teams because the Leafs, the Raptors, Toronto FC, they all needed to be completely reset. And they were. All three of them. And the three of them have had great success, for the most part. Toronto FC won MLS Cup. Raptors won a championship, at least made it back to the playoffs and have been there ever since. But you're right. Lewicki came in with just an axe, man. An axe to grind, and people were on the wrong side of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, confirm or deny. Here we go. First one. Austin Matthews will score at least 10 goals in his final 15 games of the regular season. 15 games left. He will score at least 10. Confirm or deny.
I'm going to deny it, and I don't really care if he does or not. Obviously, you want him on form. You want him to look or resemble something of what you saw last night, but I've said it from the word go, and you know this, Hayes. I don't care if he gets 30 goals this year, 35, if it means something different in the playoffs. He scored 40, 50, 60, almost 70. Well, all that matters, all that's left is the playoffs. So if it's just a 30-goal season, I don't care. Just bring it in the playoffs and just do what you did last night. Last night was like, it kind of was like, everyone's been positive about it where you're like, wow, that's like, people were sending out the tweets, James Myrtle with the gif, he's back. And it's like, well, that's great. He had a great game, but where has it been?
Yeah, and it's been 66 games where it hasn't really been there for the most part.
No, it hasn't looked like that a whole lot.
No.
If at all.
Well, both goals he scored last night, like the first one, he did that 50 times last year.
That's right.
Took a step and went bar down. And
think about just the overall play. Like, he played like he did last night.
Yeah.
Probably 60 games last year.
He had so many shot attempts and
yes, like that game he played last night. He did it 60 times last year.
Yeah.
Where it's just like all over the ice, all over the puck, and he's the guy that set the standard. Where you're watching it and you're like, he's not close to what he used to do.
Yeah.
So
okay, you're going to deny it.
Deny
Dave?
it all day.
Where are you at?
Well, I'm going to confirm it. I'm going to play the optimistic card here and say, look, I agree with O-Dog. It's not about the goal total, and no one's going to remember this goal total. It's not notable, no matter what he ends up with, right? He's not going to be, talking about awards and league leads or anything. Not even team leads.
Yeah, he's not for the first time in his career here. He's not going to lead the team in goals.
Exactly. I mean, it's amazing. Like that was his third multi-goal game of this season. Last year he had 18. Multi-goal games and 6 hat tricks.
Yeah.
He's got 0 hat tricks this year.
This time last year, he had 30 more goals.
It's crazy.
It's absurd.
But I think, look, if he gets 10 in the next 15, it won't matter except it'll say he's back, to Myrtle's point. And I'm not going to take one game and say he's back. To me, that's a little rash because we haven't seen it enough. But what we saw from his hands and, to your point, his shot attempts, his ability to jump on pucks and pounce in the moment, we haven't seen enough of that. And if that's what we're going to start seeing, that probably will lead to 10 goals in 15 games.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if he's playing on his game, if he's playing the way he's capable of playing, 10 and 15 is really child's play for him. Yeah, it's expected. 10 and 15 is expected from him. That's the bar he's set. And I feel it's like Michael Corleone in The Godfather 3. Like, every time I think I'm out, this guy, he drags you back in, because countless times this year I have been caught saying, I think he's coming alive. This is it. He's going to chase down Draisaitl. He's going to do it again. And then the next 10 games he folds offensively. And then he shows it again. And I'm like, all right, I'm back in. And I'm going to get back in one more time here. I'm going to confirm this, because the goal he scored on Saturday night, that was Allmark putting it on a tee.
Yeah.
Like that. He didn't create that. Allmark screwed it up and gave it to him. But still, there's something about positive mojo and positive vibes. He's still a human. He's still an athlete. Confidence is imperative. And if he's gained any over the last couple of games, that is significant for him. So I'm going to confirm it. Again, this isn't 20 goals in 15 games. It's 10 in 15. And these are big games. All right, confirm or deny. Rory McIlroy needs a Masters win to make his career feel complete.
100%. If you look at this guy's record, this isn't an average Joe Blow. Only 4 guys have won multiple majors, multiple players. Jack, Tiger, Scotty, Rory. He's on a different stratosphere. And ever since he puked away that U.S. Open, you look at his last 10 or 15 events, it's like win, 4th, 2nd, 3rd. Like, he's one of the all-time greats. And Hayes, you've been to the Masters, and you've seen how many dogleg lefts are on that course. I just cannot for the life of me figure out how a guy that hits a 360-yard draw ball can't win that golf tournament, man. I can't for the life of me figure it out.
I hear you, man. And like you can look at the course like through your mind. You can see it. We've all been there, and you're like, on the first hole, he should be way up on the top deck.
Yes,
hitting
with
a flip
sand wedge
in.
in his hand. The second hole, he can hammer it over that bunker and have a
Absolutely.
6-iron in his hand. It's like 8th hole, he should have a 5-iron in his hand.
Yeah.
He should be Tiger Woodsing that course before they made the changes.
Absolutely. 9th hole, right down into the gully where you're just hitting a wedge out. Like we could go through the whole course where it's like this guy should be carving it up, but he just can't. He can't do it, or at least he can't do it on Thursday, which doesn't allow him to do it on Sunday. Yeah. That's been his history at the Masters for the most part.
Thursday's been a problem. But, I mean, look, I'm going to confirm it. I'm with you, Doug. Like, he's got a chance to get into that incredibly short list of golfers with the career Grand Slam, Tiger, Jack, Gary Player, Ben Hogan, Gene Sarazen. But you know what worries me is the fact that he goes after that kid, takes his phone, because the kid didn't just give him any regular chirp. It was no cheap shot.
Why did he take the kid's phone is what I'm trying to figure
Nobody
out.
has an answer on that because he won't talk about it.
It was stupid.
He knows he screwed up. McIlroy did.
He overreacted. But I'm telling you, what worries me, if I'm a Rory supporter, is why did he overreact?
I agree.
And it was the mention of Augusta and 2011. And the fact that he had that tournament in his grasp on the 10th tee.
So that's what the kid said. He's like, you choked like you did at 2011?
Yeah.
Exactly what he's almost verbatim, because Rory hit one into the water, or hit one wide left, I think it was.
Guys, the craziest part of the story is the guy that chirped him is a college golfer.
I understand that, but that's what makes it sting that much, to your point, is that has been hanging over him for 14 years.
That's the thing.
He had a massive lead on 10T.
Yeah.
And he absolutely puked that everywhere.
He went
80
Greg
on
Norman,
Sunday.
man. Like he went. He was hitting it in those little sheds left. He was hitting in places I'd never seen golf balls.
Well, that's the thing. Like his T-ball on 11 went to a place that no one, like that was out where like there's carts driving around. And there's no carts at Augusta. Like that thing was so wide left.
Dude, on 10, he hit a golf ball. His next shot, he was in front of a white house. I've never seen a house on that hole.
Yeah.
Ever.
No, me neither. You're right. It's straight down. It goes down and up on 10. And he was
I remember talking
place.
to I've talked to some of the Augusta caddies about that. Apparently the theory is it hit a branch and went way left. It wasn't like it was a really bad
it ricocheted
bounce.
somewhere.
It was a terrible bounce.
I see. Okay.
Could have been a decent shot. But anyway,
well,
it was
decent,
a dead pull.
Decent feel is probably rich.
If he would have got lucky instead of unlucky.
I see.
But anyway, the point is, like,
that one stung him.
To your point, Doug, like I think the only explanation for why he hasn't won at Augusta is that.
Yeah, well, you're right, Dave, because that's a reaction where if a guy's saying something about your kids or something,
that's
it would almost be like, I get why Rory was like,
right.
Excuse me, like you're going to pay a price for this, just like you did in 2011 at the Masters. I like for a reaction like that cuts deep.
Yeah,
that cuts deep, and I think it leads to this because it shouldn't have to be a confirm. The guy's won a ton of majors. He's won multiple players. He's won all these tournaments. He's won all around the world. He's won on the DP Tour. He's won up here in Canada multiple times. He's been the face of the tour here for a while now. He's only 35. He's going to rack up 1 million wins and all this money. Like, you can make a case he's already one of the 10 or 12 greatest players ever. Like, you can make that case.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can make that case. But it does feel like it's different. Like with Spieth, he needs a PGA, I think it is, Spieth. That it doesn't ring out the same way. Like the PGA, you're like, okay, go get it at Quail Hollow, good for you. Like that would be big. Then you get the career slam.
Still matters.
But the Masters is different. It feels different. It looks different. There's more emphasis on it. There's more history to it. You're around forever. Like if you don't win it, Rory may not qualify for it in 10 years.
That's the thing.
Like that's the thing about that tournament, that you need McIlroy showing up at Augusta when he's 60 and laughing and joking around and
he wanted the honorary starter.
And be the honorary starter.
You can't be that.
You can't do it if you don't win it.
Right.
So you have to win you got to win at the Masters. And he's had chances. And I don't know, man. I want to see him win. I think it'd be the best story going if he could win that this year.
It needs exactly to happen what happened at Sawgrass. Scotty disappears and is not a factor, and it just falls into the place where he's in a final group, not with Scotty. He's in a final group with Daniel Berger. That's what he needs on Sunday at the Masters, and he'll smoke his ass.
Daniel Berger, shrapnel.
And Daniel Berger, it's not
He can
disrespecting
play Berger,
him.
man.
Yeah,
New
he's
bat.
a great player, but
the-
he needs something like that where he's got like I was just going to say he needs like an 8-shot lead because he's already had that once at Augusta.
Yeah.
But he needs a big lead, and I think he's just in a place now where, I don't know, maybe that loss at Augusta and maybe the choke job at Pinehurst last year, maybe he's just like, I'm too old to let this affect me now and I can get over it.
I'll
Who
believe
knows?
that when I see it, man.
Dude, you get him with a 5-shot lead on the 10th tee at Augusta, I would fly there on a chopper to watch him firsthand.
But, dude,
I would love to see it,
There
man.
is a 30% chance he chokes it away.
That's what I'm worried about.
Like
Hang on a sec. Mini Jerry's, Rory at Augusta this year, final round, 5-shot lead. Mini Jerry's, he closes it out and wins the golf tournament.
I mean, you still got to say like 70%.
5 shots is a lot.
Yeah, 5 shots is. What if it's like 2 shots? If it's a 2-shot lead,
2-shot, you're looking at 25%, man.
well, you know what he'd have to do is get through the first. He's got to get off 10T.
Yeah.
Because if he hooks it on 10T, that guy is going to spiral out of
Dude,
control.
there's Jordan Spieth had a slam dunk win at Augusta National a few
Folded
years
the
back,
sod
and he
over.
got on the 12th tee and absolutely soiled himself. Himself and shoved one in the water.
And he won there before.
That's what Molinari did when Tiger won in 19.
Yes.
Frank Molinari had a lead on 12T and proceeded to dunk at least one, maybe multiple into the water.
Gave Tiger the tournament.
Yeah, effectively, Tiger walked off 11 and said, I can win this.
Thank you.
Like, thank you, Frank Molinari. And Koepka
Frankie
did the same thing.
Molinari had a chunky meat sauce right on the tee.
All right. Rob Longley tweeted out a couple hours ago that he caught up with Max Scherzer earlier. And Scherzer said he didn't want to be positive or negative about his thumb.
What does that mean?
He said,
tell me what it means.
Quote, it's day to day. It's really stupid, but that's what it is, end quote. Confirm or deny, Max Scherzer will start more games this season than he'll miss, than scheduled starts.
I'm denying it. I'll start. I got a bad feeling about it, and I just think I don't want to assume that somebody had malicious thoughts where they kind of knew that their hand was all jacked up. But when he throws out the comment yesterday, well, it's always been like this. It's what's been bothering me. It makes you think, like, did he bluff it on a physical and just not say ow when somebody grabbed his hand? Like, I don't know. I don't get it. And it's scary stuff considering the other pitch. Didn't they sign another pitcher that failed physical somewhere else? Multiple.
Yeah, Hoffman.
Yeah.
Now, he's a bullpen arm. But
dude, how does he fail physicals in other organizations but not with the Jays? So it makes you wonder what the hell's going on.
Very valid question. Now, those other teams apparently wanted to reset the negotiations, but on different terms because they didn't want to give him as much money, and I think there were more team options, and eventually
Dude,
they won.
regardless, Hayes, failing a physical with one organization and not another is bizarro world.
It speaks to the Jays were desperate. The Jays, through the first 80% of the offseason were getting destroyed by their fans and by the media and by the market. And they were in on Soto, but not really. And then they were in on this guy and in on that guy, and everything started falling apart. So Hoffman picked up the phone and called them and said, will you give me this deal? Because those guys are pulling the chute. And they said, done. We're in. And Scherzer, I'm sure Boris, I believe, is his agent, called other teams.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, what do you? Can you give him 15? And other teams are probably like, we can't give him 15. He's 40 and he's barely pitched in 2 years. And the Jays said, we'll give you 15. So the Jays were in a position where they felt like they had to make some noise and they had to sign some guy. I'm going to deny this though. I wish it weren't true. It'd be a great story. I'd love to see a legend like this play for the Jays and give them 25, 30 starts. It's very difficult to see that happening right now.
Yeah, it's like, look, he had 9 starts last year, 8 starts the year before in Texas.
That's just not even
And
close.
now that it's starting this way,
yeah,
where he's already got an injury, and he's as O-Dog says, it sounds a little shady. He doesn't want to confirm or deny if the injury is positive or negative.
He went Fergie? Scherzer went Fergie?
Basically Fergie. Yeah. I don't want to confirm or deny if I'm positive or negative.
I can neither confirm or deny that.
That's basically what he said to Rob Longley. That's not a good sign.
The shivers.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. All right, Carlo Koliakovo coming up. Steve Phillips coming up as well on this and more. And Confirm and Deny After Dark. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Carlo Koliakovo coming up in studio. Steve Phillips still to come as well. The GM meetings continuing down in Florida. I saw an interesting tweet from Pierre LeBrun that it sounds like for the Olympic Games, they're going to announce the first 6 players per team in June, kind of like they did with the Four Nations face-off.
Anything different?
No, not really.
No, do you think
in terms
Canada's
of
6 players?
Yes.
Like, who was it? It was McCarr. It was McDavid. It was
McKinnon, Crosby, Point, and Marchand. Yeah, I think the only one that's out is Marchand. I think the other 5 are still in. Like, I think you can pretty much guarantee McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, Crosby, Point, those 5 are going to be in. The question will be is, who is that 6th player going to be? Could it be Binnington? Could they just put him in and say it's over? Like, we're just putting him in. He's going to be one of the 3 guys. Doesn't guarantee he's going to start, but Binnington is one of the 3?
That will be fascinating.
That would be bold.
To see who slides in.
I think of all the positions, you want to wait as long as possible
on goaltender,
isn't it?
Probably. Yes, and listen, he's not. He was great for them in the tournament and great in the gold medal game. And I'd be shocked if he's not on the team. But it's not the equivalent of a Hellebuck or something like that. I don't know. Marner, Taves, Morrissey. Trying to think of who else. Another Tampa player. Like I don't think you can put Sorelli in there as the 6th guy. He's Reinhardt. He didn't have a great tournament.
Didn't really do that much.
He's a winner. Sam Bennett, I don't think he would be at that level. He wasn't even in the lineup the first game.
I think Taves would be an easy guy to put in there. Like, he's automatically going. He's going to be McCarr's partner.
Could be that easy. Could be that simple. See what Carlo has to say on that. Steve Phillips coming up as well. Final hour overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.